You know what, family? I was thinking, I had to go back and forth with this, and should I actually talk about this subject? Because I know how sensitive it can be, especially for people who've actually lived it. Yet, I know I have to deliver. See, isn't it interesting that we are always on the lookout for people above us, wishing most of the time, well, in some cases, probably even praying that we don't get micromanaged. And doing that, we fail to see lateral micromanagement that is happening right in front of us. I know what you're thinking. Well, ED, what is lateral micromanagement? See, I know I'm talking to an intelligent crowd, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that, family. So I'm so glad you asked that. See, lateral micromanagement, or also referred to as peer micromanagement, it occurs when someone without formal authority attempts to control execution, influence decisions, or even undermine the delivery through a public correction or role encroachment, or basically shadow leadership. See, most conversations about micromanagement focus on hierarchy, meaning managers and direct reports, or bosses hovering, or executives breathing down your neck. That's the version everyone can align with and recognize. And because of that, we're taught to look up for threats to our autonomy. So, as project managers, we assume that as long as the bosses are hovering, let's do that again. So, as project managers, we assume that as long as our manager is not hovering over us, we're safe to lead. But there's another form of micromanagement that almost no one, and I do mean no one, has talked about. I've never heard about it. I don't know if you have. See, it doesn't come from above. Over my career, where they're having conversations with individuals or experiencing myself, having experienced, and I've heard people explain to me moments where someone they didn't report to, like a peer or a technical lead or a stakeholder, slowly began stepping into the work, not with authority, not with a title, not with a, hey, I'm really truly here to assist you. It was a correction made in a meeting, a suggestion framed as just alignment, or a subtle override delivered in front of the team. At first, you can brush it off because it sounded helpful, even similar to being collaborative. So you don't push back. You accept the input, believing, well, we're just refining the process together. But because you didn't draw the line, those moments start to stack up. See, helpful suggestions turn into directives, alignments turn into contradiction. And without anyone saying it out loud, the room has really, truly shifted. See, the team has started looking at you sideways in meetings. Decisions slow down. Authority are blurred. On paper, you could still be the project manager, but in the room, your leadership is being quietly taken away from you. See, what makes this so difficult, family, was the lack of language. See, it doesn't feel like traditional micromanagement. There's no reporting lines. There's no formal power. So you can waste your time trying to solve communication style or even quality control until the moment of clarity hit. It's where you truly understand that the conversation that is happening is not valuable. And that's when it becomes clear that this wasn't about feedback. It was actually about quality. It was actually about positioning, because once a project manager is corrected publicly by a peer, when a private conversation would have done the same job, the interaction is no longer about improvement. It's really about power. And that brings us to our first principle. Principle number one, correcting a PM publicly is a power move, not feedback. Family, let me say this, and I'm going to park here parenthetically before we get into the context. There's nothing wrong with correcting someone publicly, but again, it's how you go about doing it. If you and I are on the same team, I'm not going to try and correct you in front of everyone else if they're not familiar with the project. I'm not going to try to correct you like that. I will do it privately. See, when a peer corrects a project manager in front of the team, the message is no longer about improvement. It's about positioning. Feedback isn't meant to strengthen outcome. Public correction shifts authority, it creates doubt, and it reframes who the team actually believes who's leading this project. See, in an influence-based role like a project manager, perception is leadership. Teams don't analyze intent. They read the room just like anyone else. And once authority is questioned publicly, clarity disappears. That moment matters more than a comment itself. Why is this important? Public correction doesn't just challenge your project manager, it fractures leadership, it confuses the team, it slows decisions, and it quietly erodes trust. When unaddressed, it becomes a pattern. And if we know anything about patterns, they will continue to grow. So over time, a project manager could still hold the title while losing the role. Protecting authority in public is not an ego thing. It's a leadership responsibility. And I will say this again, there's nothing wrong with correcting someone or correcting your project manager in public, but wouldn't it make more sense to actually correct them in private so that way you can really coach them if there was something there that they may have missed? And I only bring this up, family, because I don't want it to seem like that, oh, well, yeah, you can't correct someone in public. No, that's not what it's about. What it's about is how you go about correcting them. All right, I'll get off my soapbox. Experiment with these actionable tips. Reset the room, not the person. When a public correction happens, respond calmly and protect clarity. Hey, do you mind if we take this offline? We just don't want to confuse the team. See, this keeps authority intact without escalating tension. Silence reads as acceptance. Calm redirection reads as leadership. Next one, address it as a one-on-one and focus on impact. See, public correction creates confusion around ownership. If there's a concern, I'm open to discussing it privately. See, professional leaders adjust. Repeated behaviors signal a deeper issue. Here's my professional advice, family. Strong leaders protect alignment in public and challenge in private. If someone consistently chooses an audience over a conversation, it's not about quality, it's about control. Recognizing this early prevents authority from eroding quietly, and project managers don't need to dominate their room, they need to own it. See, public correction is rarely how peer micromanagement starts. It usually arrives disguised as something else that leads to the next principle. Principle number 2, peer micromanagement often disguises itself as help. Ooh, I like that, family. It's getting good now. See, peer micromanagement rarely shows up as a control on day one. It shows up as support. It shows up as it sounds like suggestions or alignment. The second set of eyes, really, you're the second set of eyes. But when help comes with direction, public influence, or repeated overrides, it stops being collaborative and it starts reshaping authority. The danger isn't a suggestion itself, it's the pattern of who gets to decide. What feels helpful at first can quietly reposition a leader without ever asking for it. Why is this important? Because project managers are wired to collaborate. They often absorb this behavior instead of challenging it. But when help consistently bypasses the PM or redirects the team, it creates confusion and weakens ownership. The team doesn't know whose guidance carries weight, and momentum slows as decisions get filtered through unofficial channels. And this is what happens, family. When it is left unchecked, helpful interference becomes silent control. Experiment with these actionable tips. Separate input from direction. Not all help is harmful, but that is the conjunction here. But all direction must be clear. Ask directly, is this situation a suggestion or a decision we're changing? You see how that sounds? We're trying to ask, we're trying to figure out where are they coming from with these suggestions. Is this a direct decision or is this a collaborative approach? Next one, re-anchor decisions publicly. When help crosses into control, restate ownership calmly. I'll take that input and confirm next steps with the team. See, this keeps collaboration open while reinforcing leadership boundaries. Here's my professional advice, family. True collaboration supports leadership. It doesn't replace it. If someone needs influence, it should come with accountability. Otherwise, it's interference wearing a helpful mask. See, project managers don't need to reject input. They need to own the final call. And once help turns in control, the real issue becomes visibility. See, becoming influence without responsibility always leads to the same problem. And that brings us to the next principle. Principle number 3, authority without accountability is the root of the problem. See, peer micromanagement becomes dangerous when influence is exercised without ownership. When someone directs work or challenges decisions or reshapes execution without being accountable for outcomes, authority becomes unbalanced. See, they get a voice in the work, but no responsibility for delivery, for risk, or even for failure. See, that imbalance is where projects slow down. Trust erodes, and leadership fractures. Why is this important? Projects don't fail because of too much accountability. They fail because of a split accountability. When authority flows sideways without responsibility, teams don't know who owns the decision. See, issues bounce instead of being resolved. And when things go wrong, accountability, all of a sudden, everyone wants to be a magician because everything disappears. See, healthy projects have no clear owner for delivery. Everything else supports that role. Experiment with these actionable tips. Clarify ownership out loud. See, when influence starts creeping in, reset expectations publicly. For clarity, I'm accountable for the delivery and I'll incorporate input as needed. See, this is what you want to, this is a clarity statement right here. I'm accountable for delivery and I'll incorporate input as needed. See, this protects the project without actually attacking the person. We're not here to attack the person because this is what they're doing. So as my grandma would say, two wrongs don't make a right, baby. So I got that. But the point of it is that we are more focused on the entire team and making the team have success. Here's my last one. Match authority to responsibility. If someone wants a stronger voice, align it with ownership. If this is an area you want to own, let's define it. Let's define the responsibility clearly. See, people often step back once accountability enters the conversation. Here's my professional advice, family. Leadership isn't about who speaks the most. It's about who owns the outcome. Project managers don't need to compete for authority, but they need to protect accountability because when authority and accountability separate, projects drift and people disengage. See, the issue hits project managers harder than most roles because they lead without any hierarchy. And that leads us to the next principle. Principle number 4, project managers are vulnerable because they lead by influence. See, project managers rarely lead through formal authority. They lead through trust, clarity, respect, and influence. That makes the role powerful, but also exposed. When influence replaces hierarchy, leadership depends on perception. If that perception is a challenge publicly and can be diluted by peer interference, authority weakens even though responsibilities stay the same. Project managers still owns the outcome, but the room starts listening. Elsewhere. Why is this important? Influence-based leadership requires protection. When the roles aren't actively reinforced, project managers absorb interference quietly to avoid conflict. Over time, this creates a blurred ownership. It slows down the decision. The team that hesitates instead of executes puts the project further behind. Without clear influence, project managers become accountable for outcomes they no longer fully control. Experiment with these actual tips. Anchor your role early and often. Don't assume alignment carries forward. You need to say, my role is to own the delivery and the decision flow. I'll bring input where needed. Clarity reduces confusion before it even starts. I like that, family. Next one, protect decision flow. When conversations drift sideways, let's redirect them. Let's route decisions through the project channel so we can all stay aligned. This preserves influence without confrontation. Professional advice. Influence leadership isn't passive. It requires deliberate reinforcement. Strong project managers don't wait for authority to be questioned. They reinforce it through consistency, clarity, and a calm presence. Influence grows when people know exactly where the decision lands. And understanding influence is one thing, but knowing when to defend is another, because not every situation can or should be corrected. And that brings us to the next principle. Principle number 5, leadership maturity is knowing when to push and when to exit stage right. See, not every leadership challenge is meant to be fixed. This might challenge some people, good. Some environments reward clarity and accountability, while others quietly, secretively reward control, politics, shadow authority. See, leadership maturity is the ability to recognize the difference early and often and decide whether pushing forward will strengthen the project or will it slowly drain you. Staying too long in a broken, dynamic system doesn't prove resilience. It often signals misplaced loyalty. Why is this important? Project managers are often taught to work it all out at all costs, but when peer micromanagement is tolerated or protected by the organization, effort alone won't correct it. Pushing in the wrong environment leads to burnout, self-doubt, stalled growth. So knowing when to step away isn't quitting, isn't quiet quitting. It's a strategic self-leadership. Experiment with these actual tips. Test the environment, not the person. Have a direct conversation, escalate calmly if needed, and watch what the organization does next. Change requires reinforcement. Silence is an answer. Next one, track patterns, not promises. Oh, this is getting good to me. See, a lot of times we'll pay attention to behavior that is not repeated and we get lost. What I mean by that. So we need to pay attention to repeated behavior. If boundaries are acknowledged but not respected, the culture has already chosen a side. I like that, family. Here's my professional advice. Experienced leaders don't tie their identity to fixing broken systems. They know when growth requires staying and when it requires leaving. The goal isn't endurance. It is pure, unadulterated alignment. And before most project managers realize it, it's time to make that decision. Something else already starts happening. Trust begins to fade. And that brings us to the next principle. Principle number 6, peer micromanagement undermines trust quietly. See, peer micromanagement rarely causes immediate conflict. It causes something more dangerous, doubt. See, when leadership signals become inconsistent, teams stop trusting the system. They hesitate, they pause. Matter of fact, they second guess. They wait for confirmation instead of being proactive and active. Trust doesn't disappear in a dramatic moment. It erodes through repeated mixed signals. By the time the damage is visible, momentum is already gone. Why is this important, family? Because trust is invisible infrastructure of every project. Once trust weakens, execution slows, communications tightens, and accountability blurs. Team members protect themselves instead of the work. And because of this erosion, things start happening quietly. Leaders often misdiagnose the problem as engagement or performance when it's really leadership clarity. Experiment with these actionable tips. Watch the team's behavior, not the conflict. I'll say that again. Watch the team's behavior, not the conflict. Reason why I say that, because trust loss shows up in pauses or follow-ups or silence. If the team stops moving without confirmation, leadership signals are misaligned. Next one, reassert decision ownership clearly. Calmly reinforce structure. Decisions will come through this channel so we all can stay aligned. Here's my professional advice, family. Trust doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. Project managers who protect clear ownership restore confidence, even in difficult environments. When trust fades, fixing the system matters more than actually fixing people. Family, you can't fix people if they don't want to be fixed. If they want to be fixed, you can fix them. You can work with them. You can collaborate. But systems, you have a better opportunity by fixing the system because people are fitting into the system. Okay, I want to go on my right. When trust starts eroding, it's tempting to assume bad intent. But most of the time, something else is really driving that behaviors. And when you find out what that behavior is, you'll wake up to principle number 7. Principle number 7, peer micromanagement is often fear-based, not malicious. See, most peer micromanagement doesn't come from arrogance. It actually comes from fear. Fear of losing relevance, fear of losing control, fear that something will fail and reflect back on them. When people feel exposed, they compensate by inserting themselves into the execution, even when it's not their role. Understanding this doesn't just justify the behavior, but it explains why it persists. Why is this important? When project managers assume bad intent, they respond emotionally and defensively. That escalates tension and clouds judgment. Recognizing fear allows you to respond strategically instead of personally. It helps you set boundaries without turning the situation into a power struggle, and it keeps your credibility intact. Experiment with these actual tips. Reduce the fear, not the person. Address the concerns beneath the behavior. It looks like this. What risk are you worried about here? See, with this stuff, it redirects the conversation. Next one, offer visibility without surrendering authority. See, fear, we're talking about fear. As Les Brown told me, false evidence appearing real. Fear thrives in dark. Fear thrives in the dark. Fear, okay, I won't repeat it here. Provide structure updates. This is what it looks like, family. Here's where we are and what I'm watching. That's full transparency. See, transparency calms anxiety. See, full transparency helps the worry, as they would say, disappear temporarily. Here's my professional advice, family. Empathy is a leadership skill, not a concession. You can understand fear without allowing interference. Strong project managers, exceptional project managers respond with composure, not with defensiveness. And that often diffuses control-driven behavior faster than any type of confrontation. Even with empathy and clarity, there's just one, and I do mean one factor that determines whether peer micromanagement succeeds or stops. Factor isn't the other person. It's you. And that leads us to our final principle. Principle number 8, confidence is the PM's first line of defense. I like that. I've saved the best for last because I wanted you to listen to today's episode entirely. See, peer micromanagement gains traction when confidence wavers, not because the project manager lacks skill, but because uncertainty invites intrusion. When confidence is steady, leadership feels anchored. When it's shaken, others sense the gap and step in, often unconscious. Confidence doesn't require dominance. It requires composure. Why is this important? Project managers operate in an environment where authority is rarely absolute. In those spaces, confidence becomes the stabilizer. A confident project manager doesn't rush to justify decisions or I'm going to do a whole bunch of over-explaining. They communicate with clarity. They hold boundaries calmly and allow outcomes to speak. The present alone prevents most lateral interference before they even have a chance to start. Experiment with these actionable tips. Slow down your response. Confidence shows up in pacing. Pause before you respond. Choose your words deliberately, and calm pacing signals certain even under, or I should say certainty, even under pressure. Next one. Anchor decisions to outcome. When challenged, return to purpose. What does that look like? This decision supports our delivery goal. See, this is outcome-driven language, which reinforces leadership without sounding or coming across as being defensive. Here's my professional advice. Confidence is not bravado. Confidence is not you being a superhero. Confidence is a self-trust built through experience and reflection. Project managers who trust their judgment don't need to fight for authority. They naturally hold it. And when confidence is present, peer micromanagement struggles to actually take root. See, listen, family. Lateral micromanagement thrives in silence, ambiguity, self-doubt. But when a project manager names it, understands it, lead with clarity, it loses its grasp. It loses its power. Leadership isn't about controlling the room. It's about being grounded enough that the room doesn't need control. And I like that, family. Here's the truth, family. Lateral micromanagement doesn't announce itself. It doesn't even show up as a formal challenge. It shows up in moments where they're small, quiet, where leadership either holds or slips. What makes this even difficult, though, family, isn't the behavior itself. It's the absence of language. You build it with the team. Once you name that what's happening, you stop internalizing, you stop questioning your competency, and you stop trying to fix a leadership problem with over-communicating or people-pleasing. This isn't about becoming defensive. It's about becoming deliberate. Strong project managers protect clarity. They hold boundaries without having this whole ego, and they recognize when an environment supports leadership or is slowly erodes it. They don't chase authority. They anchor in it. If this episode resonates with you, it's probably likely you lived it. If you haven't lived it, understand this, family. Experiencing lateral micromanagement is not a sign you're weak. Most often, it's a sign that your leadership presence is being tested. How you respond determines what happens next. Lead with clarity, protect your role, and trust yourself enough to know when to stand firm and when to move forward. This is not about just project management. We are talking about leadership. And if you are looking for mentorship, coaching, check the link in the episode. That's you and I get to work. Oh, I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, that just simply means Ed.